Morning, Deirdre.
Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
Little fogged over.
I see that a little fogged over, and I think we should explain to viewers where you are. That
This
this is
is
not by the
Greece.
seashore. This is way inland in northern Greece. And we were looking at, or rather, you were showing me that these sandstone pillars have monasteries on top of
Yes, they do.
Byzantine
Scarily monasteries on top of them.
built around 1450, which is when the Ottomans came in and the Byzantines moved north and so forth. And this is Greece. I find it fascinating.
Yes, and a bit scary because these are sandstone pillars that, even though they've had earthquakes, even recently up there, I think 2017, if I remember right, was an earthquake up there that just had some falling rocks and all the pillars are still standing.
Right.
But you can see it. I think even right there, Deirdre, is one of the monastery buildings. I think it looks a little bit more of a human shape than anything else.
Yeah. In the foreground, obviously, there's one. I think in the big pillar, straight in the middle there, you could
Yes,
almost start to see a building on top. I think that's the
you can
one
see
we
the
were
beginning of the stairway going up at the
right.
top. It
Exactly.
is. You and I were looking at pictures of this at one point when you were talking about this part of the country. And we were amazed at what these people did back in the time, in the 1500s.
The one in the center was built in 1458. Yes.
Amazing.
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 And I think the term is Meteora,
Yes.
Meteora, in case
Yes.
wants
It's
to.
harder to see in this picture. The reason why I chose this is because it's an interesting picture. But and I know this is not, we're not here to give history lessons or geography lessons, but the one that I had was just amazing. Um, of one of the monasteries, it was looking like a drone shot from above, and it was almost the one I showed you back in a while back.
Right.
It was almost um, scary.
Yes.
It was
I
almost scary
I
to
would
look
not
at.
climb the stairs to get up to the top of it. No.
But anyway, if you don't know this area, you and I were one day we were looking at photos because I had run across some of these photos, and you and I were looking at Wikipedia and then also the images that were available, and they were just amazing. And I've never been up to that area, and it sure is a place that seems like it'd be a great place to see from the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful countryside. But this has nothing to do with our topic for the day.
No, not really, Deirdre. But we wanted to talk a little bit about the workshop we held a week ago.
Correct.
And we have wonderful people who come and we welcome new people. We had some new people show that we didn't know before, and we welcome them. And we hold these once a month on Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. East Coast time. And we pick a topic and then we begin the topic and then see where the discussion goes. And I'll let you give people an idea. We have some people asking us for this video. We don't film that video, that session, only because we wanted the freedom to have the discussion and let everybody be able to participate without worrying, because it is 6 a.m. on the West Coast and it's gosh knows what around the world for other people who want to participate. So some people decide, even we had one person on the West Coast that decided not to use the camera, right? Because I think they were sitting in bed watching it with their iPhone.
Right.
And we just appreciate the fact they showed up,
Right.
and participated. But why don't you describe, because we had an interesting reaction, both of us did, to that workshop. We loved it, but it has some
Absolutely.
surprising outcomes.
Absolutely loved it because we need a reminder sometimes, Tom. I mean, you and I work on this stuff. We
Mhm.
spend a lot of time learning, discussing, writing advanced materials on this, creating advanced courses on this. And we forget that not everyone is operating in relation to AI at the level that we operate at.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's what happened with this workshop. we built the workshop as a discussion of the human-machine partnership, that you can't simply let the AI model, the machine part of this, go and do its work and assume that's the end of it. But instead, rather, it's not only the human, it's the human who not only drives the process, but also has to do significant work to make sure that the product that comes out of the AI model's work is useful to the business in terms of leading to the results that are wanted. So we decided to run a workshop on this topic. We've been spending a lot of time on it. And we very quickly found out that no one else wanted to talk about this. What they wanted to talk about was how they are currently using AI. And I'll create a slight dichotomy here that, and this is the difference that we've made in past videos, the difference between an LLM and a reasoning model. That a lot of the work we've been doing with the human-machine partnerships uses the reasoning models. But people were using AI at the level of the basic LLMs, the basic subscription services they could get, and using things like Claude or ChatGPT or Grok or one of the other basic uses of the model. And a couple of very interesting points of view, which I'll just throw out without a coherent thread between them. One of our attendees, who was a musician, and I'll come back to a second comment he made later, but also works in technology, started by saying, well, I use it for search, maybe to write some basic documents, and it's pretty good about that. And then someone else chimed in and talked about, and this is a person with significant knowledge in the field, a consultant who works with companies on the use of AI. And what he was talking about is that people don't want to use the higher capabilities of these models yet. They still need to be sold on using the models at the very basic level, the level of search, the level of creating basic documents, the level of creating a synthesis of some of the basic documents and so forth. And that there are significant questions about this use. Some of the questions, by the way, come from the observation of how some of the younger employees are just casually using these AI models in their work, and how the results of that work are not up to the standard of the rest of the company, which is an issue that a lot of executives have to deal with or have to start even thinking about if they haven't thought about already. But rather that people wanted to get comfort, become comfortable in using these models at the very basic level, probably of search and enhanced search, that may be where the entry point to the use of these models still is. It was an entry point 2 years ago, but it still is. And it interests me, by the way, in the business press, you're starting to see articles about how the use of search through the AI models is taking away from the internet itself. It's reducing the number of clicks in the internet itself, which, by the way, is changing the economic model of the internet. But that's a whole other topic we won't get into at any point. And the reason that no one had the comfort yet to go further had to do with things like security issues. No one feels comfortable with the security surrounding these models yet. The whole issue of hallucinations, which of course is also a byproduct of how these models are trained. How are they trained to respond to questions? How are the algorithms set up and so forth? And whether the output could be trusted. Now, remember, we're talking about business uses. This is not just casual student uses or having fun with the models type thing. This is serious business uses, which is where the economics of creating these models will prove themselves or not. And then the major question of the validity of the output. Can you trust the output? There are far too many examples out there of bad output. And certainly in a business, you never want to be in a position of having to defend bad output to your customers and to the business press. It was at this point that the musician jumped in again and made the point loudly that he also didn't like the models because they're taking away the copyrights on the songs he writes. This is his words. We're not getting into the mechanics of data scraping and how the tech companies are taking everything that's published out there. We're talking about the perceptions of intelligent people working in the technology field, explaining why they don't feel comfortable with these models. He was talking about every time he publishes a song, he knows that very quickly it'll be gone. It'll be used as data to train models, and you never know where this song will come up again. And we were trying to tell him that the way the data scraping works, his song per se will never appear. And then 2 days or so after our workshop, of course, there was an article talking about how personally identifiable data was found because of data scraping and the training in a few of these models. So these are major, major issues. And at this point, a student, this is someone who I don't think he's quite 20 years old yet, an undergraduate who grew up in technology and using these models, jumped in and started to talk about security issues from the viewpoint of a 19-year-old. And the basic points he made were along the lines of, the more that AI surrounds you, the more dangerous it is. Some sort of multiplier factor in there, that maybe you can use AI in limited circumstances, but you don't know every place that AI is being used. It's being embedded in programs, it's being embedded in tools, it's being embedded in who knows what. And all of a sudden you have all of these models or all of these AI uses out there that people do not yet have confidence in. And given the multiplier factor, it's getting very dangerous out there. And this student, was talking about how the tech companies need to address this quickly because of the lack of confidence. This student created a very interesting image for us all. He was saying that right now he feels like he's standing in a puddle of AI, but very soon it's going to become a lake of AI. And the broader and bigger the puddle becomes, the less confidence he and his contemporaries have in the use of AI generally. A lot of other comments, Tom, but let me stop here and give you a chance to jump in.
So this was eye-opening because you and I spend all our time, for the most part, the bulk of our time, understanding what's going on in the world, right? And especially the effect of what's going on with technology. And then what can we take away with it to help people see things that they can then do?
Right.
Right. What we got was a lot of thought talks about, as you just said, everyone on the phone was on the call was using AI to some degree. I mean, even we actually had two musicians on the phone, right? Two
That's
that are
correct.
actually both professional performers in vastly different areas of music. But the composer, who is a contemporary composer in the jazz I can say that because he's a longtime friend of yours and mine, but also he's a techie, he's a tech engineer, and now he's full-time, pretty much full-time on music. But he was saying, so he understands this stuff very well. And what he was saying was, I love it for adding lower level productivity to what I do. So I use it, and I'm not going to use the analogy he used, but to keep musicians that are expensive but hard to keep from dabbling in things like that they may enjoy, like a beer or something, and have them ready to do what I want them to do when they do it. So he said that he hates to say it, but he employs, for some of the percussion things and things like that, he employs AI models to create that filling in for him at the lower level on the basic thing that he creates. And he wants to keep it away from his creation for the reasons you just said, because he said, I'm good for a little while, I can sell it and I can start getting a revenue stream, but soon that dries up because, as you were mentioning, it gets swept up in the learning, and he can only control it so far. And he believes that has to be fixed. Then, as you said, we turn to someone like the fellow who's the consultant, and I think he said he's been working in the field of AI, basically in the field of automation and productivity uses of AI for 15 plus years now. Someone, again, we know well who is very steeped and again, just like all these people, very accomplished in their own right. His point to us was the point you just made, that almost every company that he's part of, and he deals with the name brand companies, they're using it. And they're using it either by design because everybody's pressured to use it, or they're using it by choice, where someone at the lower level has chosen to use it for something. But when he was talking about this, he said that it works very well for automation and it works well for productivity. What it doesn't work well is the moment you break into where anything that seems somewhat creative, he didn't use those words, I'm using them, but I think I'm representing this properly, although we are going to film a podcast with him independently so that we can get his views. I think when it moves into anything, Deirdre, that is decision making, where what do I include in a synthesis, an undirected synthesis? Now, we don't like to use it that way. We like to use it in a directed way, but he was thinking more in undirected, as you were saying, where you just say, write a paper for me on this, and it writes it. So an undirected synthesis, my words, not his, decision making and creativity. He said they're just not there, turning over the control of it to that. We then ended up talking, well, we don't think about it that way, right? We think about you have to be in front of the model, not let the model direct you. You have to direct the model. And we've spent 6 videos on this, I think. And because the moment you allow yourself to fall behind the model, where the model is leading you rather than you leading it, that's when you realize you probably need to spend some time learning more, right? Because you need more ability to stay ahead of the model. And this is the point about the student. And I should say he's a student that is probably a 45-year-old in a 19-year-old body, right? As you and I both know.
Correct.
It's incredibly, and when I say accomplished, I mean, Deirdre, remember what he was doing for you and me when we were doing one intensive weekend. He actually had been to that one time, and he was helping teach people how to do this thing. So, and was doing an amazing job, and it was really fun. So we were really happy he was there. But his point was the point where we said, that our idea is that you need to stay in front of the model, not let yourself get behind. And I made the comment that when we think about it, and I know you tend to think this way too, yes, there's always something to be afraid of with everything. It's a matter of risk, and life is a level of risks. Right? It's how the risk judgments you make. But his point was that I said, well, I should say, yeah, I should give you the sequence. I said the way I look at this thing is this is no different than fire, water, um, you know, electricity. These are all, and all the variations on that we have, that have brought enormous improvements in human life. And even to take off on waters, the sewage system, right, it brought a huge change in human life and human ability to live in larger groups together and function and build on productivity. We had to figure out how to use these things. And once we figured them out, then but you have to stay in front of it. It's like water, we realize there are certain parts where we frequently get hit with, well, we weren't taking into account, we kind of let water get in front of us, and as a result, we've had these enormous floods. And I realize there are many reasons why they occur, but the question is, was there something in the systemic way that you deal with it that would have stopped this if you'd stayed in front of it instead of let yourself get behind? And in some cases, there's not, as you and I both know. You can't always protect yourself against 100%. But the point was that you and I make is, look, you just need to stay in front of these. You need to stay in front of fire. You need to stay in front of water. You need to stay in front of, because that'll thing. And then his comment back to us is, I think about it not even that way. I think about how much of it am I letting it in be part of my life? How much of it am I letting it be part of my life? Because the risk you run is the more that you let it be part of your life, like you said, if it's a puddle in front of me, I can step through it. If it's the ocean, I'm facing a different problem, right? If the winds pick up to 70 miles an hour with a puddle, it doesn't really affect me. If the wind with the ocean, I'm done. So he had a very interesting way of thinking. So he thinks about it in terms of, look, it's going to be a problem. So my way of dealing with it is, yeah, I kind of know how to use it, and I do use it, and I know he does because he's an entrepreneur, even at his age. I think this is his second company he's on now. Remember, he was doing one when we were doing the things a couple of years ago, and he was helping us teach at Columbia. But his way was just to say, look, I've got to keep a constant monitor on how much of this am I allowing to be part of my life, which I thought was fascinating. So I'm going to stop here because there are a lot of other topics that we covered. But one of the things, Deirdre, that I thought was interesting, and you might want to take a minute about this. This is our friend Srinivas, who we'll name because he's already done a couple of podcasts with us in the past, and we were going to do another one. But Srinivas was saying this point about, boy, the moment it bridges over into decision making at the very highest levels, people get concerned, and they get concerned for the reasons you talked about. And you may want to take and go on. The term hallucination, as you know, may be a little hard for people to understand the effect. It basically means making stuff up. Right.
Yes.
I mean that, and so, I mean, that's not a very fun word to use, but it essentially is what it is. It's just how much does it do that? And you and I, the other thing he mentioned, and you touched on it, was not only the thing that one of our musicians says was ownership, but it's ownership of the information and the decision making and all that. But it also is that we're seeing now that training can get out of control really fast, right? It was the Kroc example. So I'll turn this back over to you.
Absolutely. And about the hallucinations, remember that hallucinations come from the training, from the data sets. And we're calling them hallucinations. To the model itself, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
It's just proceeding on a train of thought that it's gotten from the training that it's gotten from the algorithms, from the rules that it's been given. So this is where the interplay between the data and the training and the uses becomes so very uncertain. And we're a long way from getting alignment along these lines. And to that point, one thing that Srinivas was talking about was that with his clients, a number of them are doing their training themselves. They're using the underlying technology, using their own data sets, and training algorithms on their own data sets and setting their own rules. In other words, they're not relying on the commercially available models like Claude or ChatGPT or things like that. They are creating their own models for their own internal uses because they have more control over the output, over the quality of the training, over the alignment of the training with the business results wanted, of the alignment of training with the strategy and goals of the organization. In other words, they as humans are stepping in to control the process more. This is slight step along the lines of what we really thought we would be talking about in this workshop, Tom, the human-machine partnership. And where I'm going with this is that almost everything that our participants talked about could be affected one way or another, likely positively, by having an effective human and machine partnership in place. And before I go on to talk more about this, and I doubt we'll cover the whole conversation in this one video because we want to control the amount of time we dedicate in each of our videos. You were telling me an interesting anecdote about where the human-machine partnership went wrong, and it's absolutely apropos the comments that we were hearing about hallucinations, problems with process, the need to do your own programming, and so forth. So why don't you go ahead and tell the anecdote?
Yes, and sometimes, Deirdre, the time plays a great fortune because this occurred on Saturday.
Yes,
And had we filmed this on Friday, like we planned to do, we wouldn't have this anecdote.
right.
But uh, so one of the things that Srinivas was saying is that where people have seen the models go wrong is on the customer facing side. And so
Yes.
they are that the better uses of these is to be really careful on the customer facing side. I had a situation where I was renewing a membership and I was renewing it for a couple of different family members and myself. And I've been doing that as just sort of a gift that I do once a year for an annual subscription. So it turned out that I went ahead and did it for three family members and myself. And I did that at the early part of the month, this current month. And we're about halfway through, or a little more. And I then didn't until this past Friday send an email to them saying, hey, oh, by the way, I've just re-upped this for you, so expect to hear from them. And two of them sent me a note back, oh, well, we've already decided we don't want to be on your payroll, you having to pay for us to do this. We want to pick this up ourselves, which is great. It's wonderful. So I said, okay, great. I'm glad it's still working for you, and that's great. And so I then went back this past Saturday to check out the refund policy because it's only been a week or so, and 10 days of the maximum. So then uh, there was only one place I could go, and it said, well, we have a 60-day refund policy from the time 60 full refund policy from the time you renew your membership. So I wanted to understand how to do this, right? It was not clear how to do this and where to go and so forth. So because they have no human contact ability, they have replaced it with an AI support uh, agent. Okay, not a chatbot, but it's a combination chat and agent, meaning it's making decisions on data that's being presented. It's not synthesizing. And so I went down through and described the situation to the chatbot or to the AI agent. And, I'm pretty careful with how I do this, right? Because I do it all the time. First of all, it was maddening to deal with because whoever set this thing up is every single time you write something, it then repeats it back and said, so I'm just confirming, is this what you wrote? Or is this what you want? And it just took and did a copy and paste. And I'm going, yes. But it was absolutely maddening every single time it was trying to confirm what I wrote. And then, which is fine if you only go a couple of steps, but you go beyond that first step, and every single time it does this, that whoever that sits in that group of senior leaders of a business, and this is a big business that is funded by tech investors, was founded by people in that industry, and is being run by tech people. But what they're clearly not, people that are in that deciding, that are in charge of marketing, for example, or in charge of the revenue model or the revenue, clearly haven't been through all the use cases here, because it stepped me through this thing in a maddening way. I mean, and where I wasn't able to direct it at all, it was directing me through, just holding me back. And in the end, it told me, well, the only choice you have is two different choices. One, you've paid for these people and they're going to be on the list, and that is not going to be refunded. The only way that you get a full refund is for you to cancel your full membership. Now, we're not talking a small amount of money here. This is $125 per person, right? So we're talking about, so I paid him $600 for the 4, and all I'm saying is, please refund the 300. And it said, well, I can't do that. They just, don't worry, they're covered. And I said, no, that they have their own membership now. And it flat out could not understand what I was trying to explain, because the layers were too deep. And it basically, I said, so what should I do? And it said, well, if you want a refund, the only way to get a refund is for you to cancel your membership. And we'll issue it, because we give a full refund within the 60-day period from the time you renewed your membership or you joined. I think it was renew the membership. And so I said, okay, thank you very much. And I said, can you now just direct me to how to do this? And it said, sure, go in here, touch this button, and work through that process, and we'll refund you 100% within 2 business days. It actually did it faster than that, I must say. So that process of refunding worked great, but I had to cancel my membership. That was Saturday. Okay. Sunday, I was issued the credit on my credit card. Today, Monday, I get an email from them saying, we're sorry to see you go. We'll give you 2 months free and a $50 discount on coming back. And I think, okay, so I'm going to get one of these a week for a month. I'm going to get one a month for the rest of the year. And so when I get ready to do this and use this membership, which is probably not going to be until the fall, for the one of the 2 of us left on this thing, it's probably going to be the fall. So I'll just wait until then, because by then maybe I'll get $100 off in maybe 3 months, right? So somebody didn't really think this through. And this leads back to this decision making of the AI agent in this case, where you turn something over from, instead of providing information, providing decision making. And this is the decision that you and I, this is where you move from synthesis to decision making, right? This is where you're letting that. Now, what did they do? They're using their own, probably they built their own AI, because the AI was maddening to deal with. It was not well done. And this is where whoever you and I say, and we've said this now as long as you and I have been involved in entrepreneurial work, building companies and running them, you have to know how to use your product, and you have to go through everything. This is where there are a lot of things that Elon Musk does that I know people annoy people and they don't like. One of the things he does, though, I think is worth everybody to keep thinking about, is he sits down with whoever designs something and says, take me through it, show me how you did this. And then he sits down and looks at it from the other side, not just the inside, he looks at it from the outside. Okay, all the people responsible for the output of this thing, show me how it works. Let me step through. This tells you, if anybody who's in charge of the revenue model, who's in charge of the profitability of the company and the growth of the company, and is in charge of marketing for that company and is in charge of customer support because there was no human that you could get in touch with. There was no phone call to call. You could only talk to this AI chatbot agent. They called it an agent, by the way. And they were correct. Uh, but but whoever is in charge of those things has not gone through all of the use cases of how that what decision can that thing make. It should have dumped me to a human being. There were too many layers of complexity here. And what it did was it just ignored the layers of complexity and said, okay, you're asking for is that what you're asking for? The refund? Yes. The only way you can get a refund is for you to cancel. I mean, first of all, I don't think that's a good revenue model in the first place, obviously. Um, but there's so many issues there, and I know you're hopping to get on this because this violates pretty much everything that you and I talk about using AI models. I'll turn it over to you to now,
When you first told me this, my first reaction was this company kept their same processes, even though they turned to a new technology. It's whenever you go from one form of technology to a new form of technology, you likely have to change your underlying processes to make sure that they are still valid for the new technology, or more likely that they need to be revised to accommodate the new technology. The whole thing sounded to me as if the executives involved just turned this over to their tech department and said, okay, create a new thing here and release it, without understanding that once you start to get into the decision-making processes and so forth, you need extra layers of care. You need to make sure that the decisions being made are consistent with your customer service policies, with your company culture, with your revenue model. I mean, you and I did some mental calculation here. And if this agent is doing this with all sorts of people, then the company is losing thousands upon thousands of dollars every month, simply because people have no way to do this except by claiming back a lot of money from the company. So this is actually a good example of how the human has to drive the whole process.
Yeah. And here's the bad part, Deirdre. I like this company. I like this
Yes.
product. I
Yes.
will come back and use it. There's no comparison to anything else. Nothing else exists that is as good as this. I love the company. I've been a part of that company ever since they started. I even gave them money for 2 years when they didn't even have a product because I thought they were on the right path.
Right.
It's maddening when you see a good company and think about their refund policy. How good is that? 60-day full refund if you try it and you don't like it, or if you re-up and you don't like it. It's that subtlety of what happens if I've got a duplicate members. This is only a complication of they had already re-upped themselves and I re-upped them.
Right.
And it just takes a human to go in there and check the two emails, right? And you can tell that you now have them twice in your system. Gee, that's not right. Let's let somebody intervene. But their
Right.
systems that they've now put in place don't allow for that.
And this, by the way, is a fairly simple request. Think
Yes.
about someone going in with a more complex request. Something like, I tried to use this and it didn't work.
Right.
Let's figure out how. I'm not sure the agent would have been capable of dealing with that kind of a request.
I don't know. But it sure does question it. And this was Srinivas's point about the moment you turn this over to customer-facing decision making. There have been enough examples where companies have lost a lot of money. Think Air Canada,
Yes.
where they lost a lot of money because of that, allowing an AI agent to make decisions, and they had not thought through the revenue model carefully enough and the decision-making process carefully enough. But this is your point about that you and I make about making sure you're in front of the model, not behind it, right?
Absolutely. And in this particular case, that the humans started out right. by selecting a technology, by developing a project, by setting goals for the projects, but then the humans with the knowledge. And that's the important point. The humans involved in the human-machine partnership have to be the ones with the knowledge. And that's not just the tech people, it's the people who know the revenue model, who know the customer service processes, who know what the company wants to accomplish with the use of this technology, how they have to stay involved and also have to make sure that they're involved in the testing. Too
Yes.
many executives feel, oh, I don't have to test anything. That's an IT function. They can do this. It's like, no, the more complicated your technology, the more important your technology is to your business model, the more of an imperative, and it is an imperative for the executives to be involved in the testing, because that's the only way you are sure that you are getting what you wanted out of the development process.
And you and I both know if the company's being run by a founder, they're going to be doing this stuff naturally anyway, and they're going to be thinking this stuff through, or at least they'll be getting good advice from people who own parts of the business that they may not be that comfortable or familiar with. But this is for all those people that are not product people that are running these businesses, is to make sure that you think that through. By the way, there's nothing that I think a week's worth of work, and it probably less than that, you could clean that up and make it way better. But nobody, and by the way, I got sent a survey and I answered the survey. Yeah, I did what your AI support chatbot told me to do, right? And I named it specifically what they said it was, because that's what it told me to do. So I did what it told me to do. And none of the marketing material I was sent back or anything referenced the comment I made in why I left. I had to use an other category because it didn't fit anything that was in the list. And the other thing is, no good senior executive would have tolerated the way that thing talked to me. And this partnership of the human. This is the partnership of the human on the consumer side, right? It just was maddening. But you could tell, Deirdre, the tech is there. So people like you and I can tell if the tech is there. The tech is there. This is a bad implementation of tech, and this feels to me like people that don't understand the model of the business well enough, that are designing, as you said, the processes, because they probably took the old processes and are using it and just did what Srinivas says people are doing, which is automation of certain things, which drives productivity and cost savings. And they probably saw a way to eliminate jobs and do it more consistently and in a more cost-effective way.
And it strikes me that when you got your questionnaire, clearly the questionnaire was an old questionnaire.
It was.
With the traditional options there, it did not think through what options could arise from the use of this agent.
You're absolutely right. And it didn't hit me until you've just said this right now. There was no ability for me to give them feedback on how I got to that decision.
Right. And this is going to be a problem, a big problem with the increasing use of agents as opposed to just chatbots. Now, I'm not sure that you had a sense of how much of an agent this was vis-a-vis a chatbot, but whatever, it called itself an agent. And I'm sure most of our listeners know that these AI agents are more autonomous.
Yes.
They get their training, but their training is also along the lines of making the decisions so that they can accomplish tasks on their own, using their own initiative and their own paths and their own ways of doing something. Based on their training, yes, but without further input from the humans in the process. And I think that the more that these agents are out there, we're going to get the tremendous compounding of problems. You were talking about a very simple use
Mhm.
of an agent making certain decisions, but clearly bound by certain training. Once you get, for example, people, the tech companies talk about, oh, these agents can plan your European trip for you. Well, think about the possibility for error in planning a European trip there. You know, that it's a matter of what decisions you allow this tool to make, whether you have confidence in the decisions, whether you can live with the results, and what can be done to get people to have more confidence in this thing so that they will adopt it. And not just people who are casually by themselves looking to find airplane flights, but businesses, which is where the revenue comes from, businesses who are uh, thought to be willing to purchase these real agents with their own decision-making capability and initiative capability and so forth to actually accomplish the work of a business. It's the sort of situation that makes you and me, who have worked with so many business people and have built so many companies, just go crazy contemplating the possibility of error here.
So, if you think about all the things we talked about in that one, and actually we allot an hour, and it's early in the morning, so people come in even 30 minutes after we get started, and we obviously accommodate them because it's early in the morning on a Sunday, and not everybody keeps the same schedule on the weekends they do during the week. But we ended up going an hour and a half, and that was just because nobody was wanting to stop because we were keeping going. But if I list, Deirdre, and you had done this for us, issues of security, hallucination, meaning making stuff up, filling in gaps, training, ownership, and then you looked at the way you and I think about the uses of these things today. It's starts with automation, was where it started originally anyway. Then it moved to focusing on productivity through the use of automation, and then also through the use of synthesis, which is combining things, researching and combining things. Then you and I see that there's an element in here where you and I use it's the reasoning models for research and decision making, but we don't turn them loose yet. And there's, for all the reasons we've talked about, and Srinivas said the more sophisticated users he's seeing are not turning them loose for decision making. Now, there are great examples of really good decision making that exceed humans in a lot of cases. Self-driving, full supervised, full self-driving Tesla cars. They're unbelievable. But the millions of dollars and the millions of miles that have been driven, and I can't even imagine the man hours or people hours put behind that effort are unbelievable. But it's pretty good. And that, as most people know, I'm speaking from personal experience. But we had one person on the call who said, yeah, they just at home and punched in, and that drove them all the way to Columbia until it got confused by changing
This
the
is
ever changing which direction roads go, right?
someone driving from New Jersey across the George Washington Bridge, down the West Side Highway to the Columbia University campus. Anyone who's driven in New York City understands what an amazing feat this was for
Never touching it, including going through the toll thing and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's astounding when you use it. But then there's the issue not only of decision making data, then it moves into creativity, the actual creativity. And you saw somebody like the musician we're talking about, the one musician who's the composer also, and he is using it for creativity, but it's productivity at the low level creativity, not the actual real creativity that he's concerned about.
And you and I make a distinction of sorts. But, talking about how AI affects business, we talk about productivity as one of the things that technology does. Then we talk about the main effect of the reasoning models in particular is that it changes the substance of work. It
Yes.
changes how the work is done, who does the work, how the output is gotten, how the output is worked with until you get something that's useful. And everything that I think we heard in the phone call in our Sunday workshop was operating at the level of productivity. Even the business uses we heard about was operating at the level of productivity. Now, mind you, productivity is a wonderful thing. And glad to hear that people are getting productivity gains from the use of the technology. But it won't be until you start to get into the whole aspect of changing the substance of work that you start to take advantage of the capabilities of these models. And I think that's where you and I thought we were going to go with the discussion of the human-machine partnership. And I rather think that our next video, our next episode, is going to really dig into this human and machine partnership from the point of view of how does the substance of work change
Yes.
given the definition of the machine part of the project and the human part of the partnership, how the partnership works, and then how you have to work with the output to get the result you need. All sorts of process changes, people changes, thinking through the logical trains of thought. How do you create the sequence of topics that gets you to get the machine to do its work properly so that you get output that can be used, changing the substance of work to then create, for example, a strategy or a plan or some sort of decision or something like that. And it's too deep and too serious a conversation for us to really get into now. We're coming to the end of our time for this video, but we will do this in our next video. But meanwhile, I think the main takeaway from the whole Sunday workshop, or my main takeaway, is that one, that the use of AI models is now infiltrating society. All sorts of people are using it, but they're using it at the very basic levels. They're using it at the levels of search and maybe writing some basic notes. A few might get to the level of synthesis, but even that is above where some people are operating, which leaves tremendous potential for growth in the use of these AI models, if done properly. And you and I have opinions about how the tech companies have to start thinking about the development work that they're doing to get to the point where the models are that useful for businesses. But that's the topic of our next episode.
Yes. And we think that what we see, and when you think about what you and I are doing for people or trying to do for people, is to help people see what's going on in these areas and then help them understand what the effects of that might be, for good or bad. We're not making any judgment. We're not telling you how to think. We're not telling you how you should think about these things. We're just telling you, here's what we see. Here's what this could mean to you. And here's what you may want to consider in how you deal with it. And one of the things that you and I believe, I think, and this is why these subjects are really critical, we think that as a not just a founder of a product, but a founder of a business.
Right.
When you've moved over from not just founding and product managing and developing and managing that product and marketing that product, but you actually are building a company. When you're doing that, it's concepts that are coming into what you and I are seeing is the concepts that are going to be very important, are not just the foundation of what an entrepreneur needs to know. But then beyond that, it is this understanding the concept of this human machine partnership and the roles that are in both sides. And then also that the substance of your work is changed. What you and I were looking at what an entrepreneur did back even 5 years ago or 3 years ago, with this now being a part of an organization, any organization going forward, and the capabilities there, it changes the substance of your work. And that's the subject we're going to introduce in more detail. What that means is no matter where you sit, if you're in charge of anything, we think this technology coming in is strong enough that it's going to mean that if you aren't figuring out how does it change the substance of my work, you are going to quickly fall behind. That's the risk. I mean, that is the serious risk. And so not understanding this stuff and thinking about what does it mean to my work? And we think that it means a lot to the people that are surrounding the person that runs that organization, he or she, that it is going to change from there down on the substance of their work. And that's going to be the exciting part of moving forward.
Very much so, Tom, because there's so little guidance out there right now on how the substance of work will change. A lot of the materials we see in the business press are still working their way up to defining how this technology is not simply another tool, like it's not another word processing program. It's a whole new way of going about work. So what does that mean for leadership, for management, for product development, for building a company, for running a workforce? And these are things that, well, we're going to be communicating with people about over the coming year. But it's also, it changes the whole work of entrepreneurship as well as the work of all of the people, from the
Yes.
CEO down to the front level in an organization.
And we've been struggling with we want to update our books, right? And but we're reluctant to move until we thought we could see it. We're beginning to see it, and so we're going to be massively updating our books in the next few months. And because we believe, Deirdre, that one of the parts of our infrastructure that is massively going to change is how you learn and how you teach, right?
Absolutely.
And how you as a parent guide your children or your extended family in learning and teaching, because we believe that has to change too. And this is among all the other things that poor universities are going through. And we say that because we love them and
Yeah.
we're a product of them. And we
Yes.
deeply care about certain ones, even though we're holding off involving with them because they're just struggling with many, many issues. But we think one of the things they're going to have to face is that it changes dramatically the substance of their work because they have to figure out how this works with them. And the thing is that it can be incredibly valuable in teaching because we think you can take now and teach in a much more effective way and teach much more. But it means changing everything.
It means changing the substance of education, not simply the productivity side of education.
And, we also are going to soon, we're going to break out a path here so that we have one path that deals with people that are in a job today leading a company, and then those who are trying to study to do that. So we're going to break out and have a path that deals with both because we think it's important. And in that path of people that want to study and learn, we're also going to be dealing with teaching of it, and including being a parent, because even though I have a son who's doing more teaching to me, that the role is reversing, right? But I will say that I have so many contacts, and as you do too, they're mutual friends and people that I deal with who have children that are using these capabilities, and their parents want to make sure they're learning, and they're
Right.
not just doing what you and I would call a raw automation process that's below productivity. It's just write a paper on this for me, do the research and write it, and it comes back and if they're very cool, they've loaded in their personal writing so that it writes somewhat in the style that they would write anyway. But it's too productive to do that because it helps you organize, it helps you make sure it's complete, it fills in the gaps. And the problem is that it can also hallucinate when it fills in gaps. And if you not have enough experience and knowledge about the field, you may not see those hallucinations and you may not see what it's making up, right? So there's all kinds of things, but it's an exciting area. And we just think that we're going to start down that path on both. And so you'll see more and more from us on these as we start to form those things in the fall. But any other words of wisdom, Deirdre, on this subject? Because
just stay tuned, because things are happening all the time, and we will get the human machine partnership video done very quickly, so you can get our input on that as well, and then our other topics before we start the two-path system.
Yeah, and then we'll have a third path, which is the one that you and I love too, which is what are we seeing in the marketplace just in general, and how can we better let you see what we're seeing? Because we have the luxury of spending more time than most people could, because it's what we do. So we'll have three paths down there to help you see the marketplace. Second, how you can deal with the job of being someone who builds companies. And then also the path of how do you learn and teach this stuff. So exciting times coming. Deirdre, it's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Tom. So long for now.